Hi, everybody, and welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and today I'm joined by Lynn
Greetings.
and Eric.
Hello.
And today we are doing our episode, the Abby Scale, where we're talking about season 5 of Knots Landing, episodes 8 through 11. So I will roll the credits, and we will get right into the discussion.
There we go.
So I took some notes, but the last episode I didn't. So I hope you guys did.
I took some.
I did.
Just a little.
All right. So the first episode, episode 8, is titled "A Change of Heart," and I have Diana makes an official statement detailing everything Chip told her that happened to CG that resulted in her death. And of course, just as after the fact, she sees everybody rushing to Chip's room, and he's awake from his coma.
Right.
Yeah.
Did he seem a little too cheerful?
Well, he was funny when she walked in, and he looks at him and he's like, "Hi, hon." I don't know, like he's coming out of some anesthetic and he's a little bit wacky or what this dude was, but
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of getting burnt out on the storyline, and I don't know if it's Diana, because Chip's always entertaining.
right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any notes on this scene, or?
I mean, it was kind of funny that the minute she goes and tells the police everything after holding out, that he does wake up. But that's Murphy's Law, and that's kind of Diana's luck, too. She doesn't have the best of luck, so it was kind of humorous seeing her being so shocked.
She was so dramatic during the confession. She had to stand up and walk around the room while she was telling it.
And she's holding on to that whole thing. She's like definitely got that brainwash syndrome where she's like, "You don't understand. He did it because he loves me." And it's like,
Mhm.
let's see how that lies.
And then Mac was in that scene too, where he shed a tear, right?
Yes.
I kept thinking, because we have the same male detective that we've had since the end of season 4, I would have preferred if Janet Baines would have stayed.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
I mean,
she didn't.
He's fine. Like, I don't hate him, but I really like Janet, and I wanted to see more of her.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that. Just because of the rapport between her and Mac and stuff like that too. It would have been kind of interesting, and Mac's so heavily involved in all this.
I was thinking the same thing as the overall thing.
Maybe because she was kind of like a known face. Maybe she cost more.
Maybe.
Right.
My next note is Abby doesn't want Karen to know about their shared property. She wants to develop Lotus Point for herself. And I put Appaloon is mentioned, and I'm not really sure if this is the first time we hear Appaloon.
No, the previous episode, Jim set up that Appaloon Corporation for her as a subsidiary. So it was mentioned before, and he says, Abby says, well, HMO or H&O management is who's making those payments to Karen. She's like, couldn't there be a buyout and Karen would just stay in the dark and still get her monthly payments and not know be none the wiser? And he's like smiling and saying yes and putting the wheels in motion to make that happen.
Is that when Laura went to apologize and mend fences with Karen, and she's like, I'm willing to, like, she wants to buy you out. This is what she says to offer you, but I'm willing, as your friend, to tell you that she's willing to pay this much.
Well, yes, right. That did happen, and Laura now too she's starting to be shifty because everybody else is having windfalls except for her because her husband left her and she's having to scramble to make money.
Yeah.
She has cocktails just with Jim one-on-one and alludes to like, hey, what's that deal with that? And he's like, "Oh, you mean the HMO?" And he spills the beans on everything, and she's quickly putting two and two together.
Yeah, my note on that was Laura gets James Westmount drunk to get information out of him.
It's true.
I like when she mentions things that Abby thinks is just between her and James, and Abby's all like, "How do you know about this?"
Oh. And he's very forward too. He says that Abby's wanting to do this because she wants to develop the ocean front to then develop Lotus Point is the whole goal. So, Laura's understanding. Abby's got big business plans in mind too, and Laura's trying to figure out a way to be a part of this or get her share of the pie too.
Yeah, and Abby also is like, because she knows why Laura's there, is to spy on her, pretty much. She's like, "You're gonna tell Gary?" And she's like, "No, not as long as it's not hurting him."
Uh-huh.
So that's a little, ruthless of Laura.
And Karen attempts to make up with Laura, but then she gets distracted by Diana immediately.
Yeah, because she even told her like, don't leave. I'll come right back. And then as soon as she hears Diana, she goes flying.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just sick of Diana.
Yeah.
I get it.
He probably said the same thing too, sadly.
I think I blocked out how much I was not loving her at this point. Because I was like, "Oh, it's not that bad." It is that bad.
That's
Yes,
fine.
man.
Okay.
So I have Carrie tracks down Kathy Geary, the
Yeah.
CG lookalike.
Yeah,
Well, first, doesn't he find her at working as a waitress?
yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Because he kind of goes to that temp agency or whatever that she's working through and finds out where she's waitressing that day.
Yeah.
He pays them off. They tell him information.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, he's acting very strange. I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's like in his head, he feels like he's making amends for what happened to CG by helping out this lookalike.
Right.
Yeah,
Because he doesn't even know what he's doing.
Correct. Correct. He's fumbling forward is all he's doing at the moment.
But it's almost like he's having an affair, but he's not, and he's newly married. And Abby's just like, she's weirded out, but she's okay with it because Abby's already having her own affair on the side.
It's an interesting distraction for Gary. Let's put it that way. Well,
Yeah.
maybe in the next bank episodes, I'll talk about a theory about that a little bit more. But right now, he's just trying to. It's a side project for him, and it's keeping him busy. And all of a sudden, he's just diving into it 100%.
Yeah. I have Ben and Val visit Lily May, and she thinks she's coming home.
Mm-hmm.
Val tries to reason with her that they can't take her home just yet. And, Lily May flies off the handle.
She does. She's like, "You dumped me off here," basically, is what she's saying, which, of course, gets Val and feels right away. She doesn't like that her mom's so upset with her.
Yeah.
And she doesn't even acknowledge Ben's presence.
No.
Yeah, I don't know what Lily May's thing is with Ben.
Yeah.
Is it because he lied about being a news reporter at first?
I think it's maybe because Lily May doesn't understand why she's there. She feels hurt by Val, and anybody that's not siding with what Lily May is saying, she's probably against them. So because Ben wasn't saying, "Val, we should take your mom home," Lily May had no interest in him whatsoever. She probably wanted him gone because she probably feels he's a negative influence instead of a positive influence.
Probably. I have the doctor prescribes Karen painkillers for her back pain.
Yeah.
Yes. And
This
she's
is
kind
what-
of, and she's like, "I don't need anything." And he's like, "Karen, you're not sleeping. You're complaining of this back pain. Just take the prescription." And
So is this the era where America's opioid issue started?
I believe
Was it like the early to mid 80s? They were just pushing painkillers?
I'm just
Well,
hearing I'm hearing the Rolling Stones song "Mother's Little Helper" running through my head. It's
So I have Karen visits Chip and asks him to persuade Diana to come home while he's away in prison.
Big one.
She begs him, basically.
Yeah.
And
And
he's cold to her. He's like, Diana's a big girl. She can make up her own mind, Mom.
Yeah.
And when he says Mom, that was just like,
he
that's when she's kind of unraveling and losing it.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, who let you in here? Who let you in? Like, they were just ignoring what she was saying.
Yeah, basically just like slowly chipping away at her sanity.
Right.
And then the last note I have is Chip escapes from the hospital.
Well, so then I was going to say, too, Mac really lays into Karen saying she has to let Diana go, and Karen flips out at Mac and says, you don't understand. She's not your daughter. And Mac was a little put off and hurt by that, too, because, again, sometimes he feels like the outsider in Karen's home, as I like to refer to it, since he's the one that moved in there. But even Karen, who's getting stressed out at work because of life, she's at Knots Landing Motors and gets stressed out one day, and when she's in the office by herself, boom, she walks over to that water cooler and takes her first pill. So I'm like, it begins.
One thing I noticed throughout these episodes with those pills is they're just displayed on the windowsill in the kitchen, just sitting there. Like, that seems like an odd place to put them, especially if you're trying to hide that you have an addiction.
Well,
as it progresses.
I think she wasn't at that addiction point at this stage. Let's put it that way. If you're a person who is primarily healthy and you don't have any medications or prescriptions to take, I think the common thing was people had to have that out so you see it, so you remember to take it, because you're just not used to taking pills. So it had to kind of visibly be there as a reminder. But yeah,
I'm that way. That's how I remember to take my vitamins. I keep them out. If I put them away, I don't take them.
In later episodes, they use a bowl and they put high blood pressure pills in it, and then they just keep adding to it like Tic Tacs.
Peter. God, I love Peter Hollister.
Very soft coffee. Gary just follows her all around in this one, I think. He pops up at the gym, at the diner.
Right? Wants to meet with her for lunch, but she just stays in her car and looks at Gary and join him.
Yeah.
Yeah, does she follow him at one point? Because there was
she was supposed to meet him for lunch. He got her to agree to that when he tracked her down to the gym.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then she just stayed in her car. And I laugh because I feel like it looks like the exact same cafe that Gary stood Val up to when he was supposed to meet her, and then he turned around and married Abby. Because it had that same black awning to it, flap. And I'm like, is that the same restaurant? They're just shooting it from another angle. It was kind of
I think it was.
Probably was.
It was.
I like the little moments in this episode too, like Mac and Michael playing basketball. I like that. I like when they show connection scenes like that, because then it makes sense for everything that happens later on in their relationship.
Yeah, this wasn't a big episode for me. Like you said, there were like moments, but overall it wasn't like, I don't know, an episode that I go back to.
It was also in this episode that Ben was over at Val's and they were eating dinner at her dining room table, and then she tells him that Gary and Abby got married. He goes, "What's the big deal?" And she confesses that her and Gary had kind of started seeing each other again. And Ben's like,
"Yeah,
I leave," and he gets up and walks out. So yes, I think you did kind of cover it with, how it ends, where the detectives head into Chip's hospital room, getting ready to arrest him. He must be well enough that they could take him from the hospital. And Diana's like, "Can I at least see him?" And they open the door, and all that's there is the dangling handcuff, and that's it. So,
I will say I do enjoy the little back and forth between the detective and Diana throughout these episodes. They hate each other so much.
Right?
They're so mean to him. It's horrible.
It's funny.
For me, I would give this episode a 6. It wasn't that special to me.
No, I think a 6 is probably pretty fair. I'd say a 6.
Well, we had Gary in the sauna. That should at least give it like 6.5.
Well, now I have Ben, so my attention is split.
Oh, that's funny.
Gary and his pal, that wins. 6.5 for me.
There you go.
So is that a 10 for you then, because he was in a sauna and a towel?
Oh, that's funny.
All right. Well, episode 9 is called Money Talks.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely like this one more. Cops are patrolling Gary's ranch, thinking Chip might show up
Right?
because Diana's living there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, my notes
That's
are very very vague. I have Laura meets Kathy.
Yes.
Refresh my memory. Is that when she was already trying on the dress and everything and lip syncing, or was that a different scene?
Yeah, not in this episode. This is one where she's just she's working out with Gary at the ranch a little bit. Okay, this one, you'll love the note that I took on this. Kathy works out with Gary at the ranch. She talks a little bit about her ex Ray, because she was suspicious on who this Gary was and thought maybe her ex Ray sent him. And I put parents, Gary in gray sweatpants. This rating might be a little bit higher for me. So I'm like, okay, there's some pretty obvious imprints going on, shall we say.
Was he wearing the workout belt also in this one?
I don't know that he had the workout belt on, but he definitely was all natural underneath his sweat.
Yeah, all of a sudden we're working out a lot. I was like, when he was like making her lift the weights, I was like, you're going to kill her. she's got tiny arms, and you're like, more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Greg going on in this episode too, as well as his dynamic with Abby, and he's definitely trying to pull the reins with his affair with Abby, trying to put down those gauntlets, like, these are contributions, you can't buy me off, and she's expecting a return on her investment because she's got business plans that she wants to make, and through his help she wants to get things like land variances done for the ocean, for point development.
See, Greg has not always been my favorite character, and when they start talking politics and business deals, I don't get it, so I just kind of I feel like I zone out and I don't catch all the details. I heard the word variance being thrown around a lot.
Right. But it's funny because Abby is working him with her wiles like she does with Gary, and Greg's not of that stature, you know what I mean? He's cut from a little bit of a different cloth, and that's hard for her to handle. I mean, at one point, she's having him give her a ride in his limo, and he has...
Oh, this was the episode.
This is as far as you go, and she's got to get out, and it's windy, and her dress is blowing open, and I'm like, she was pissed off.
Okay, so when that happened, I had the thought that just the way it was shot and the way she was walking, that she probably felt like he got rid of her like she was some hooker. Like he just left her on the corner.
He kind of did.
I was just like, wow.
Running his electric shaver on his face and lets the door open, and it's like he doesn't even say goodbye or no kiss or nothing. Whoa.
Well, I have a note that when they're in her office that they kissed and she leads him up to her secret apartment. Had they already slept together at that point when he kicked her out of the limo?
Yes.
Well,
okay.
Yeah. Before that, she was married. I think they slept together.
Okay.
And then this was the first time after. Because I have Abby's first affair.
I have Val visits Ben's beach apartment. He appears not to be home. I really like the scene because she tries to write him a note and she keeps well, first I was like, okay, why do you keep wasting paper? You're wasting trees. You're writing a sentence and then crumpling it up.
Right.
She writes a few notes and then she finally decides on one. And she goes to leave it at his door and he sees her from down below. And then she goes back and she takes the notes. He doesn't. I thought it was just a cute, quirky, Val. It was such a Val scene.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
Second guessing herself, not sure what she should say.
Like,
wants to see him, but doesn't know. Yeah.
And then she does go back later, and they talk, but she says she's not going to stay the night. But then after he's got his pajama bottoms on and is in bed, knock, 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 there she is.
Yes.
And they have Mac met up with that guy, Tom, from his past.
Yeah, he must be like an informant that Mac is trying to, again, with his crime commission case, he's kind of closing in on the bad guys. And I'm just going to say the name St. Clair is kind of who we see talking a little bit, show up on the scene. But yeah, it's all very, you kind of got to put the pieces together. They're kind of falling slowly here.
Yeah, this guy was an ex-lawyer that went to jail for tax evasion. I think is some of the details I picked up from that.
Yeah, they set him up for something, it looked like.
I have Gary invites Kathy to stay at the ranch.
And she kind of pushes it away at the idea, and then she kind of backs up in her little Volkswagen Beetle Bug, and it's like, when can I start?
Is this the episode when they're working out and she's going through the records and she finds CG's record and she kind of notices?
Not until the next one.
It's the next one? Okay. They work out a lot, I guess.
Yeah, they do work out. kind of at the beginning. This is when Mary Frances first shows up.
That was my next note. So, in my head, I remembered Mary Frances only being around for maybe 1 or 2 episodes. She was around for 4, and I'm assuming more because she didn't leave.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, I must have blocked Mary Frances out because they recast her later on.
They did recast her later, so
This girl's good too. I wish they would have gotten her back.
Yeah.
I did remember her having like a little light thing with Eric.
Right. Eric's entranced with her right away, and Mary Frances ends up staying at the Mackenzies overnight. Eric comes down for breakfast the next day all dressed up, and Mike comes why are you all dressed up?
Right. I love those moments. I think they're so fun. So real.
She's angry at Greg because he forgot her at the airport.
At the bus station of all.
Oh, the bus station. Greg asks Karen and Mac if Mary Frances could stay with them. And this is kind of where, like, Karen is, she's not trying to replace Diana, but she's kind of trying to have, like, that daughter connection. So she sees Mary Frances as an opportunity to kind of bond, I guess.
The void she's definitely trying to fill, and I don't think she recognizes it right away, but then when she realizes that Diana's not there, that's when she has such strong reactions to it, too.
Yeah. And Ben and Val sleep together. We already talked about that.
Right.
This is one of my favorite lines. Abby tells Greg if she ever has to make a choice between love or money, money will win every time.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I use that in the SoapNet promotion.
I remember that being on SoapNet and like the promo.
I think she was so blunt that made him finally respect her and get her, because I think he was a little bit worried. He's trying to do this political campaign, and he's like, is this woman going to get hung up on me? She's married. I'm married. You know what I mean? So he was always trying to keep his distance and be a little bit cold. And since Abby was kind of like, hey, I'm adult here. I know exactly what I'm doing. These are 2 different things, and I have goals too. And our lovemaking is not part of that, and it's not going to affect my marriage, is basically what she was trying to say.
Yeah.
It's a business deal.
This is also this is the episode where Laura lets it be known to Abby that she knows about HMO. And Abby's a bit put off, and then she says, she asks Laura what makes her happy, and Laura says, money. So this is good. This is the Laura we're longing to see again, because this is kind of how Laura was a little bit in season 2, especially when she first started Abby, and she was upset with Abby for sleeping with her husband Richard and smacked her in Val's kitchen that time.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see that really feisty Laura come back.
And that was also when she was starting her career. She was doing really well with the real estate.
Yep. Exactly.
So yeah, I'm happy to see this. I liked her little, speech to Abby about, Karen got a new husband.
Yep.
Val's husband left her and she wrote a book and she became successful. So she's like, I want a piece of the pie.
Yep.
And then Abby says she said something along the lines, and she was like you play your cards right, you might get your own pie.
Right? Yes.
And I was like, I'm kind of liking this like
Mhm.
frenemy thing going on between you.
I liked in the steam room when Abby and Diana were talking. Abby actually gave her pretty decent advice about Karen. I like that.
Yeah.
So you would think she would turn her against Karen more, but she also kind of won Karen's side in a way, even after Karen told her off.
So, I would give this episode an 8.5, because I really like this one.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd go with an 8.
An 8?
Yeah.
I'll say. I'm just looking at the other ones here and thinking a little bit. I'll say 8. 8 is fair. I was going to maybe say 7.5, but I'll say 8. It was good. I like the Abby dynamic, both with Greg and how Abby wasn't on top, and how Abby kind of got played a little bit by Laura too. Abby didn't win on all of this episode necessarily. She kind of had to show a little bit of tolerance and rethink her game a little bit.
All right. So episode 10 is called Homecoming.
And this episode, special note, was directed by John Flechette.
John Flechette.
Who played Richard. Yep.
Yeah, I was happy to see his name.
Exactly. It's kind of funny that they did bring him on for this, considering there was a lot of CG throwback going on in this episode. It kind of makes sense.
Yeah. This is the episode where Abby sees Kathy. I was going to say CJ. Kathy for the first time when they're working out.
Yep.
The last episode for the first time.
I liked. She was like giving Gary looks like, "What are you doing? Are you crazy?"
And this was the episode too where they were working out to music, and Kathy flipped through the albums and she saw the CG album there, and kind of
Yeah.
bass quite a bit too.
Gary explains to Abby like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yep.
He just knows that he wants to help her. He takes her shopping, whatever she likes.
Takes her shopping. Picks out an outfit that looks very familiar and has her try it on. It was a little bit of the episode was a little bit of a throwback to Pretty Woman, because they go and spend shopping at this expensive place, and the sales gal was kind of being a little bit snotty, but knowing she was making commission and money and stuff like that too, she was pleasing her.
Yeah, I was getting a Pretty Woman vibe from it, so I was waiting for her to like, kind of be like bitchy, but she wasn't too bad. I remember her saying, "Oh, that's on sale at $750," and they're like, "Oh, sale."
Yeah, exactly. But then when they walk out, they walk by a hair salon, and he's like, "Hey, do you like your hair like that?" And boom, next thing you know, he's taking her in there. And
he's getting a ranch cut. He said.
I did. That was like total hockey hair going on there, but whatever.
Her hair is like platinum blonde now.
It is.
It's not like, sandy, dirty blonde like it was. It's just platinum bleach blonde.
Yep, exactly.
That way they could say, "Oh, you just kind of look like you resemble CG." This is the episode where she's lip syncing.
It is. So she ends up pulling out that album, putting it on. She's got her new CG outfit on, and there's the mirror. And as Tommy says, he loves Kathy singing some CG songs in front of the mirror. And
Laura walks in, right?
Pardon?
Laura walks in on that too, right?
Well, first Gary walks in, and he's like, no, keep going. And he turns the light off, and he sits down and watches her, and that's when he's having the flashbacks of CG singing the same song. And Laura goes up with paperwork or whatever, and as she gets out of her car, she can even hear the music blasting already. So she's apprehensive walking in, and the look on her face when she walks in and sees Kathy, and then looks at Gary and flips the light on, and they both kind of stop in their tracks. And she pretty much is like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Yeah.
Kathy runs out, and Gary's like, "Hey, I liked her, you liked her. This gal affected our life. I don't know what's going on. I'm just trying to make it right. He's like, I almost went to jail for her death.
Her death, yeah. Yeah.
Then it seemed like Laura demurred a little bit. So then Laura heads back to her car. She never goes through any of the paperwork she brought out there to take to Gary.
Yeah.
Waiting for her out at her car, and she's like, hey, you know, I don't know what you're doing, but, you know, don't wreck this for me. Gary's been nice to me, and I want to repay him however I can, ... And it's like, okay, read into that what you want, but Laura just kind of lets it go and leaves and doesn't really read. I thought maybe she was going to read Kathy the Riot Act, but she didn't.
Yeah.
She even said, go in before you catch a cold, so she cared a little bit.
This would have been the perfect opportunity for Laura to have a line like she was somebody we both were in love with or something.
I mean,
that way she could admit that she was in love with her.
Right. Or she would have been like, we both cared for her very deeply. Because that's how they were back in the 80s. They were very careful about their words and how they wrote it. The writers were too scared to say the word gay or anything like that back then.
The network cut them off on that, I'm sure.
So Abby and Greg, I did like this scene. Abby and Greg sleep together, and he has to get out of there, and he can't find his sock. He's like obsessing about the sock.
Yeah.
And he ends up leaving, and right as he leaves, Abby like folds the blanket and finds a sock. And I thought this was very sloppy of Abby to go running out where her secretary, like, oh, I found your sock.
Would she ever?
As his daughter is standing there.
Who would run out into the lobby where the receptionist is and say that? Because she didn't want her receptionist to know what's going on, let alone Mary Frances and Eric are there and quickly put two and two together. I'm like, really? That was pretty sloppy on the writers' part, honestly.
I felt the same way. And the only thing I was thinking is she knows the secretary that she needs money, so she's probably like, she'll keep her mouth shut, you know, whatever I do. That's
I suppose, but I'm just like, that's not very Abby-esque to, pun intended, dirty laundry like that. You know what I mean?
It was reckless.
It was reckless for Abby's character.
Uh-huh.
And then we got to see more of Mary Frances and Greg's relationship in this one, and they're kind of strange.
Yes.
Mary Frances is like asking Eric back at the house, like, "Are you experienced?"
Right. Waiting for someone to pull out a condom or something like that.
Yeah. And then when they kiss, she was like, I don't usually do this. That's not something I would have done like an hour ago or even 5 minutes ago."
And isn't this the scene where they turn as they pull apart? Greg standing right
Greg
there.
is standing there. Yeah. I do like the hostile relationship between Mary Frances and Greg.
Right.
Yeah.
This is also the episode where, for the first time we see, the audience, Greg gets out of his limo and meets with St. Clair. And I'm going to put Perrin's Wolfbridge. And he says, and this St. Clair says, you know, that they're scared about Mackenzie and how much he's digging into the crime commission. And he's saying, like, to Greg, you need to kind of snuff this out. And Greg's like, I can't do that. I'm in the middle of a campaign. It's fine. And then Greg mentions to St. Clair, I need that variance for that ocean redo at Lotus Point. And he's like, well, I'll talk to my people about it. And doesn't get very promissory.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden it ends, you know, it spirals into there's a barbecue happening at the Mackenzies, and Greg shows up there, but he was supposed to be meeting Abby during that time, and she's blown off and ticked off and kind of goes home, and she's kind of taking it out on Gary a little bit too, and he's kind of like, what's your problem?
Yeah. Where's Olivia and Brian? Like,
she's off rowing a boat in that lake out on the ranch, and he's playing the
I think this is the episode where Val and Ben are over for dinner at the Mackenzies.
They are there, and Ben's a little. Ben, like, kind of was reading the riot act to Mac earlier about Greg's intentions in his campaign. Ben doesn't really trust Greg and what his ambitions are. So then Greg kind of invites himself into this barbecue or whatever, and he meets Ben for the first time, and Ben's kind of aloof to him, definitely.
Yeah.
And Mac's being a little protective of him because Mac really cares about his reputation. And he's like, oh, he's not a bad guy and he's not going to do things wrong. Otherwise, I wouldn't be part of this and da-da-da-da-da. And Ben's starting to see how Greg could definitely be in on the take and be shifty too, just like a lot of politicians.
No, there was a dinner. I don't remember Greg being there. Maybe I'm thinking of a different scene. There was a dinner scene because I remember Karen taking the food out of the oven and like putting gravy over it. And I was thinking, like, wow, she's really, nicely dressed for somebody that's cooking right now. And I remember Ben said something that Mac kind of took offense to. He said, like, would you say that to me out in public? And he's like, no. He's like, then don't say that to me in my house.
Right.
And it's kind of like this awkward, like, okay. But Mac just was like, whatever. And they shook hands and they had dinner. Like, he just brushed it off.
Yeah,
that's Mac.
That was the dinner. That was before the barbecue, I think. That dinner.
I think you're right because you're right. That scene with Val and Karen's putting the red sauce on the lasagna or whatever. That's when Val started to say she doesn't think the sanitarium's a good place for Lily Mae too, because she's having a lot of guilt from her last visit. She's starting to have her doubts that she shouldn't be there. So then later in the episode, Val just makes the decision, goes and checks her mom out of it, and the doctor or admin or whatever is there, and she's like, "Oh, Mrs. Ewing, I don't think you should be taking her yet." And Lily Mae's
starting to trust us and open up to us. And
Lily Mae's like, "Goodbye, doctor." And she out the door. She's like, "We're at last." Where's that auto harp? Let's start singing.
So at the end of this episode, Diana goes to a barn with chicken.
Right.
And we find out that Chip's been hiding out on the ranch.
Yeah.
And that's how the episode ends. That was a good ending.
It was. There was also one other bit on this, too. After Lily Mae gets out of the sanitarium, Val, Lily Mae, and Karen have lunch together.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit of Diana's brought up, and right away Karen starts grabbing the escatine, and Lily Mae even says, "Oh, you're taking escatine. They had me on that at the sanitarium." So, kind of looks, it's like, okay, foreshadowing.
Mm-hmm. I really like this episode. There was exciting moments. I like the one-liners.
Yes.
I would give it 8.5, maybe even a 9.
I was gonna say I'll give this a 9. I enjoyed it. I like the CG throwback and the heightenedness of Laura seeing what's going on and wondering what is going on, because Gary's trying to make an homage to CG, basically. That was kind of freaky.
Plus, it was good just to hear music. Those damn music rights that won't let us stream.
Real quick. This was another good moment with when Laura made it known that she knows about Apolloon, and Abby was like, "How do you know about that?"
Yeah, she actually said Apolloon, and Abby was like, "What do you know about Apolloon?"
Well, and Laura says she's entitled to 5% of Lotus Point, is basically what she's saying, too.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
I give it a 9 as well.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a good episode. All right, and our final episode of this bunch is I'll Tell You No Lies.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best. I love this.
I actually watched this one twice because I wasn't paying attention the first time. So I kind I have Mac questions Tom on whether a lawyer named Kavanaugh is the head of the Wolfbridge group.
Right.
And
And
Tom is out on parole, right?
Right. Tom's not being very fortuitous, or maybe it just seems that way, but Matt keeps pounding it home. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Mac has become a little obsessed with that, and Karen kind of sees it, but she's going into her sleepy, dozy pill coma too, so she's not reacting too strongly.
Yeah, she's there was a scene where they were going at it, and she kept asking. She asked Mac like 3 times the same question, like, don't forget to ask him about this. And he's like, Karen, I already did.
Exactly. Which is a good dynamic, seeing those two banter a little bit.
And then she would like zone out. It wasn't even like the banter though. She was just like zone out and be like, oh, don't forget to ask him. And he's like, you already said that.
Right.
Yes.
He gets annoyed with her finally. It's like, oh, God.
Also,
the madness and patrol. I like how they did that.
I like the scene later on. I know this is skipping ahead, where she's like painting the chair,
Yeah.
and then Mary Frances is like, it was like homework or whatever to look at.
Can you look at my report and read
Yeah. And she sits down and she's like, I can't believe I just did that.
I know, that's great. And how they laugh about it for a while after.
This is when the episode even starts too, where the detectives are back out at Westport looking for Chip, and Diana and Abby come across him, and Diana's like, you don't have any right to be here, and he's like, well, actually Gary gave me that right, so you can take it up with him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kathy has a little conversation with CG2, and she's like, who's this Chip guy? And she's like, he's my husband. The police want him because he killed CG. And she just like bluntly says that.
And she's like, you look like her, you know?
Well, yeah, like, holy shit, you know, I look like this girl and there's this killer running around.
How did Diana see her for the first time in this episode? I thought that was odd. I'm like, she lives there. I guess it's a big ranch. I don't know.
Right?
I feel like they're very aggressive about him being on the ranch all of a sudden.
Well,
Like, are they looking anywhere else?
Diana's nervous because she knows Chip wants to leave soon, and they're trying to make their plan to get away, but she's feeling the walls close in. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so, forgive me, this is the episode, where they do have a barbecue at the Mackenzies, and Greg shows up to hang out, and Ben is cold and aloof with them. And meanwhile, Abby's frustrated because she got stood up for their afternoon delight, and she went home and got short with Gary because Gary tells her how he was asking Diana, do you know where Chip is? And he feels she's lying, and Abby's like, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't do that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
she would.
I don't know if it was this episode or if it was the episode before that Gary offers Kathy a job on the ranch as a ranch hand. Is that why he told her to get the ranch haircut?
I think so, yes.
And I like the scene where she like, I'll think about it, and she drives away, and then she goes in reverse, and she's like, when do I start?
Right, exactly. So Chip tells Diane to get plane tickets and the rest of her savings or whatever so they can get away.
Mhm.
And he ends up going later that night to the Mackenzies outside after the barbecue is done, and they're all playing Monopoly. And Mary Frances is there, and they're all around the table laughing and having fun. And she's outside crying. I didn't remember that scene. I feel like I was seeing it for the first time almost, and I'm like, she does feel bad about leaving her family, and she has remorse, and she misses that, because I think she does, as a sane person, understand what a loose cannon Chip is, but she just can't break that cycle because she's like, he loves me. He killed her for me. And it's like, oh, girl, here's a therapist number here too. Go now. Go fast.
Yeah, I've always kind of... Go ahead, Eric.
That's like the only time we see remorse from her, I feel like, in any of these episodes.
Right.
It was just nice to see her not on the ranch. I felt like she never leaves the ranch. But also...
a bucket of chicken around everywhere eating whenever the cops are around.
Right? Like, she even like sets up a little picnic. He's like, oh, that chicken looks good. She's like, it is. And she just starts eating it. But yeah, the scene where she's watching through the window, I always took it like, she probably also feels like she's being replaced because there's this girl living at the house. She doesn't know who this girl is.
Right.
Although maybe she's heard through the grapevine from her brothers, who knows?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I skipped it. One of my notes for one of the episodes was Michael in a crop top playing basketball.
Yeah, that was a previous one. Him and Mac are out there playing basketball. Definitely got that little crop top on. Well, this one I know you don't have a lot of notes on, do you? Or should
No.
I kind of go through some of mine? Okay. Well, this is also Diana meets up with Chip. She gives him a watch. They make a plan to meet at 5 o'clock on whatever point of the ranch. And then he's like, show me the money, show me the tickets. And he's like, I better hold on to them because if Abby or Gary catch you with this, they're going to wonder what it's for. And she kind of begrudgingly hands the
Yeah.
stuff.
She has a moment where she's like, okay. And
That
you can
was-
tell she's kind of like...
Yeah, exactly. But then, meanwhile, Abby's back at her office, and Greg finally shows up, and they're seeing each other for the first time since he blew her off. And she's being really cold and aloof to him, and he walks over, and he's got a little piece of paper rolled up, and it's land variance that
the
she
variance,
needs.
yeah.
And so then they kiss, and she cools and demurs to him, and they turn and start walking because they're going to go up to the penthouse. And there's Laura and
Laura.
Cece together.
And she's just smiling.
Yeah, it's such a perfect moment. Again, I love how they're using Laura, and she's there at the right time, and she's dropping the right one-liners and stuff like that. It was good.
It's almost like, go ahead, keep giving me ammunition.
Right. Exactly.
What does she? Laura does say something there. She's like, "Oh, am I early?" or something.
Right. And Abby's just like, crap. The last person to be caught died. I'm like, well, you should honestly be more upset that his daughter caught you, but okay, whatever.
Right.
Right.
Go ahead, Tommy.
No, I lost my train of thought.
I've got written down here that Karen is stressed as she's moving more of Diana's things into the garage because she tells Mary Frances she's making room for her. And Mary Frances makes again some reference to Diana, and Karen just blows past her, goes in the couch, or goes to the house right over the kitchen sink and grabs that bottle of pills and downs the next one. And I'm like, oh, girl, it's spiraling quick.
Yeah, it's kind of
Does it
like when it's awful the things that she did or put you through or whatever. She's like, if I ever meet her, I'm gonna give her a piece of my mind, and that's when Karen's like, I'm gonna go, I'll be right back, and she kind of starts crying and grabs the pills.
I think she does it again with Lily May too. Doesn't Lily May say something? She's like, "Oh," runs away.
Oh, I do. Okay, Lily May's being trying to stay busy, I guess, and she's scrubbing the refrigerator.
Fridge.
Oh yeah.
And she tells Val a story about how she gave Chip, I almost said Cliff, Chip $30 to go get groceries, like a 10 or a 20.
Uh-huh.
And he came back and he gave her $1 and change from the 20. And she's like, Chip, I gave you $30. And he said, no, Lily May, you only gave me 20. And she's like, I didn't want to make a big thing out of it. And she's like, maybe I had forgotten. And Val's kind of like, what's the point of the story?
But, well, am I not supposed to talk about him? Am I supposed to pretend like he was never in our lives? And she's like, no, Mama. But Val's concerned about her mom because she's still a little bit rattled. She's probably at that moment thinking, did I make a mistake checking her out of the sanitarium too soon or not?
She definitely did. She should have stayed in there a long time.
Oh, poor Lily May.
So now
And started harassing everybody again.
Right.
So now Gary has taken this lookalike, dressed her up, gotten her a haircut, given her a job, and now he wants her to sing.
Right. He's some hokey, honky tonky song, and then he wants to hand the guitar to her and force her to do it.
When he was doing it, it was cute, but I was like, oh no, we don't need another Lily May with the auto harver. We don't need this. But it was cute with his little twang, the way he did it.
Right.
Um,
And she gets pretty emotional. She just really rebuffs the idea, and she says,
she says, I'm not her. I'm not going to be her. I'm not singing.
And out the door she ran.
Yeah, it's sort of getting weird for her there.
So this is when everything starts to come together for the big ending.
Yep,
She
the
leaves.
climactic ending, because now Diana's running around trying to find Chip. And she
So she goes to the barn, and another sloppy scene. Somebody grabs you, and you go, "Oh, Chip!" and it's the cop. Why don't you turn around first and see if it's Chip before you flat out say that you've been hiding Chip? Very sloppy.
completely. But then he's trying to hotwire. Chip is trying to hotwire a vehicle,
Mhm.
and there's too many people around, so he gets spooked and runs in a barn, and he
Mhm.
hears somebody come to open the barn door.
So he picks up a pitchfork.
he picks
but
up it's like a hay hook is what it is. to
Yeah.
grab a hay bale.
But he drops it.
Well, the door flicks open and Kathy walks in and she's crying. And she
Mhm.
turns and looks at him, and he's like in shock. This is the one time I wish maybe the editors would have done like a single frame of CG, so we could have been like, "This is really what Chip sees." You know what I mean? Too. Just like how
Ooh.
we had that when Kathy was singing in the mirror. I wish they would have
Yeah.
made it just to heighten a little bit more, or maybe if it would have even
Yeah.
been, this would have been great. This would me be a director. It would have been great if it would have been a clip from like when he hit her over the head, and he would have had.
Ooh.
And you would have known the definitive moment that he really was the one that killed her, and now he's spooked by seeing her ghost alive.
Did he say CG or was he just like, it's you? Like
He
he
did
said.
say, no, he said CG, and that's what made her turn and look at him, and that's
Uh-huh.
what made him kind of step back, and then he
Mhm.
stepped back too much and lost his balance
And he got impaled. Yeah.
on the pitchfork.
Just
So
the
then-
the music in that scene was very like Friday the 13th for me. It was like a very 80s horror movie. Like,
But I like that it was very obvious that like he died right away, so you didn't have to like wait till the next week to be like, well, is he dead?
yeah.
It's like, nah, the life went out of his eyes, and then she's screaming so much that the cops hear it in Diana, and they come running in from a different direction and see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the best payoffs because I'm like, everybody probably wanted to see him die.
Yep,
Like really bad.
exactly.
Yeah, I love this episode. This is one of the episodes that I remember like the first time I saw it because I was just like in shock.
Right?
So this one's a 10 for me.
I would say a 10 too. I'm gonna kind of go full circle, just like the episode Celebration where CG got bumped off, and I felt that was a 10. I felt this was a 10 too. It kind of came full circle.
10 for me as well.
Nice.
All right. Oh yeah, that's the second time that's happened. I think Celebration was the first time we all did 10s.
10's across the board.
I did like in this episode too. I have Mary Frances knows Greg stood up someone for her. Do you remember that line in that?
Mhm.
Like he was trying to get a hold of Abby because he was upset. Like he was trying to connect with her again, and then she's like, "Can't you stand up?" And like, like,
Right?
Yeah.
my dad's a dick, so I thought that was funny.
Very cool.
Unless I just blocked Diana out, like I blocked how bad she got. I don't think we see much of her throughout the rest of the season. I think her like screen time decreases.
Well, there was a little personal issue going on with the
Yeah,
actress in that time.
yeah, I had read that.
So I think, we're going to see her for a couple more episodes, and then they kind of whisked her out of town.
Yeah,
They did bring her back.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
But-
way later, right? Come back. I don't even know. Does she come back in another season, or does she come back in the movie?
I think she's in like the premiere of season 6, and then she's gone for a while. And then she comes back in later seasons for an episode or two.
They,
But yeah, thanks for joining me today, guys. As always, you can find us at Queers and Soaps on all the socials,
nice.
and we will be back really soon with another installment of the Abby Scale because we're gonna power through season 5 because it's so good.
There's a lot more good stuff to come.
And yeah, and until next time, have a great night, guys. Well, it's not night, afternoon. I'm used to doing this at night, so
I get it.
have a great weekend. How about that?
Awesome.
All right, bye, guys.